Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the November 12th, 2024 South Granville Water and Sewer Authority annual monthly business meeting. And now our first order of business is oath of office for Kenneth McLam and Vicki Daniels. Kenneth has been reappointed for 3 more years from the town of Stem. Vicki has been appointed for a full 3-year term from the town of Butler. And Mr. Attorney, you ready to administer the oath of office?
Sure. We're going to do it together?
Yeah, you want to do it together?
Yeah.
Robert, do you have the one they actually signed?
I think she has copies of those, yes.
I'm not going to make you read it. Yeah, unless you just want to.
No.
You can put on a performance if you want. Make sure you left hand on the Bible and raise your right, please.
Raise your right.
Do you solemnly and sincerely swear that you will support the Constitution and laws of the United States, that you will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina, and to the constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the government thereof, that you will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution and laws of said state, not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States, to the best of your knowledge and ability, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of your office as a SGWASA board member, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations.
Yay! Welcome back.
Yes, welcome back.
You're welcome to. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now, next order of business is roll call.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Gooch.
Present.
Commissioner Karen.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Kaczynski.
Present.
Commissioner Way.
Present.
Councilperson Daniels.
Present.
Commissioner McLam.
Present.
Councilperson Chief won't be with us this evening. All are accounted for.
Okay, thank you. And now for invocation. If you will, please join me in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for all the many blessings You've bestowed upon us. We thank You for the ability to come together tonight to work for the customers of the South Granville Water and Sewer Authority and work for the staff and employees of the South Granville Water and Sewer Authority. We ask that You guide us, lead us through this meeting, and that may everything we do be pleasing in Your eye. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
And if you will, join us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there any adjustments that need to be made to the meeting agenda? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Review of and approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from last month's meeting? Okay, and do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. That brings us to public comments. Amor, you ready? We didn't have any by email, and you're the only one signed up tonight, so we're anxious to hear what you had to tell us.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. It's not my first time to speak in the board in the SGWASA meeting. It's been many, many years. But I just come to came attention again because, and I make it quick and reach limited time. The issue about the water, and I always, the community, I go to Food Lion, to drugstores, the other store, even here at the hospital. I think in my humble view, I think you need some kind of explaining to the community, because this is back in the days when we have still water and Creedmoor people, we saw it to SGWASA. I've been to the meeting, Channel 5 came here, Channel 11, meeting speak, and they always say that the water in Butner is bad, you cannot drink it. And it just is spreading to the community. And to be honest with you, I drink bottled water. I almost live here for 30 years now in Butner Creek, and I work at the hospital here in Central Regional. And I think the board, so I talked to the lady that we told during election time, there is this perception that water in Butner, the SGWASA is not in the hospital. To be honest with you, nobody drink the water. They always say, drink bottled water, drink coffee, don't make. So I think that's I try to explain them, no, they're trying their best, they're fixing all this thing. Because when I moved here in 1997, there's perception that I think the Lake Hope is during the war, it's just spreading people, even in Creedmoor, they're telling that the cancer rate is the highest part in the southern part of the county. And it's just spreading to the community, and I think that's the one that the board need to tell the community. As I said before, and there's another one. It's not one occasion. This is several occasion. A friend of mine bought a house, a nurse here, and everything okay? Yes. So you know what the realtor told me before she gave me the key? Don't drink the water here. Really? I said. So I think that's the main thing. I think the board needs, and then you're talking about this lead inspection. Right now, they're going to play. If I go to the Food Line during SGWASA water, I will not even finish my word. They're going to say no. Some even make exaggerate sometimes. My dog don't even drink. Oh, come on now, don't. So me, I drink bottled water. I can wash my clothes, but I think that's the SGWASA need to do to the community, especially we got Butner Creek one source. There is some like a PR or explaining to the community, because they're just spreading that the water, the SGWASA water, is not good, high in cancer, because there's some research that they make back in the days that really but the state always say, when we pass we are in compliance. We check the Lake Hope. There's nothing there. There's no ammunition. It's all clear at the time, but it's just becoming that it's just the perception now that SGWASA water is not good to drink. And I told them they're trying to fix it, and they're doing it, but I think that's the SGWASA. I think that's the thing to the community, and not only that, they will say the rate is high. They always say like that. You pay high, you cannot even drink it. Okay, I said, well, I'm going to retire here in the community. I'll stay here. I'm not going to move out in here. So I think that's the only I keep repeating myself. But I think that's the main thing. I think the SGWASA need to have some explaining to the community to remove that perception. Even today, I go to the store, they will say, no, we don't drink bottle, we don't drink. That's always they say. So I think it's just explaining to, I hope Mr. May, we used to argue with Mr. May back in the day, and he always said, so that's all I can say. I think you're trying to fix the problem, you get grant from anything like that, but they still spreading. Even the realtor, they will say, don't drink bottled water when they sell the house to the community. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you. And board discussion items. And I see that we have none for tonight. Has anyone come up with anything in the meantime? Okay. Then we'll move on to our next item, which is our audit presentation. And Ms. Carlene Evans. I guess, Richard, you're going to introduce and start it?
I'll start it off and
Thank you.
introduce Carlene. As the board knows, we have to have an annual audit as required by general statutes. We've had the good fortune to work with Winston Creech and Evans and Company for the last several years, Carlene Evans being the auditor in charge on our audit. Once again this year, there's no audit findings, no management letter. We've got a clean audit, just a few highlights of the auditor's report that Carlene will go into more detail in the slides. The audit resulted in an unqualified opinion from a clean audit with no findings and no management letter being issued. Cash and equivalents increased $4.5 million for a cumulative total of $34 million. Of the $34 million, balance $5.5 million remains designated by the board for future capital improvements. The authority's fund balance and undesignated fund balance remains healthy. The authority has $15.5 million in loan debt, $12 million in bond debt outstanding, and we paid down loan and bond principal by $2.5 million last fiscal year. The authority's water and sewer revenues for fiscal year 23-24 increased nearly $1 million when compared to fiscal year 22-23. The authority's interest income for fiscal year 23-24 increased nearly $756,000 when compared to fiscal year 22-23. We had numerous discussions in the quarterly presentations about the interest rates and how that was the case. After Carlene finishes her presentation, of course, she or I will be available for any questions the board may have. And I just wanted to say again that it's been a pleasure all these years to work with Carlene on the audit. She always works with us to try to get our audit done ahead of time. Just so the board knows, our audit goals are to have field work finished each year by August 15th. And our goal was to have it to the LGC by September 15th. Unfortunately, the last 2 years, we've been delayed a little bit because the LGC hadn't released their audit worksheets that we needed to submit the audit by the 15th. But once again, this year we submitted the audit early October and have acceptance early October. And I think that's when the board got notification to audit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Carlene Evans with Winston Creech Evans and Company, LLP. And at the end, just a note, the board does now, I think for the last 2 or 3 years, have to actually vote to accept the audit when it's completed. So the executive director's recommendation after the presentation is that the board of directors act via a motion to receive the audit report for fiscal year 23-24.
I'll repeat some of what Richard just said, just go into a little more detail. If you can go to that first slide. We did have a federal single audit this year, which meant you had federal expenditures more than $750,000. We did not have any findings to report for the financial statements or the scheduled expenditures of financial federal and state awards. And as Richard said, we had the audit approved by the LGC, and we have submitted the data collection form to the Federal Clearinghouse, so all of our reporting has been completed. The next slide we'll start with, this is Exhibit 1 in the audit report. At the end of the year, total assets and deferred outflows were $107,021,000, which was up $6.5 million over the prior year. Total liabilities and deferred inflows were $31,758,000, which was down $2.3 million over the prior year. That left a net position of $75,263,000 at the end of the year, which overall was up $8.9 million over the prior year. And the largest items that changed on the asset side, construction in progress was up $3.5 million, and cash was up $4.5 million. I have a slide on that later as well. Liabilities, the main decrease in liabilities was for paying down the debt. And then this slide shows the statement of activities. Revenues for the year were $20,675,000. Expenditures were $11,780,000, which left a change in net position of $8,894,000. That change in net position was $2.5 million more than the prior year. The increase was primarily due to operating revenues were up $915,000. The ARPA grant was $999,000 more than the prior year, and investment income was up $755,000 over the prior year. So the next slide will show the revenues by source. The largest piece, 47% of the revenue, was from wastewater, which was $9,630,000. 29% of the revenues were from water, and that was $6,090,000. The next largest chunk was the ARPA grant, which was 14% or $2,891,000. And then 7% of the income was from investment earnings, which was $1,471,000. Then we had several little categories that didn't really compute to a whole percentage, but we had other income of $365,000. The AIA grant for water was $47,000. AIA grant for sewer was $24,000, and contributed capital was $152,000. So the total revenues for the year were $20,675,000. And then next we can compare the revenues budget to actual. The original budget was $15,289,000. The final budget after the amendments was $20,791,000, and the actual revenues came in at $20,523,000, which was $268,000 under budget. Next, this is just looking at the normal operating revenues. Wastewater was $9,630,000, which was up $693,000 or 7 3/4% over the prior year. Water revenues was $6,090,000, which were up $312,000 or 5.4% over the prior year. Then turning to the expenditures, 78% of the expenditures were operating expenditures. That was $13,808,000. Then bond debt represented 9% of the expenditures, which was $1,522,000. Loan debt was 10% of $1,763,000, and then 3% was a payment to the town of Butner, $500,000, leaving total expenditures of $17,494,000. Then we can compare the expenditures budget to actual. The original budget was $15,289,000. Final budget was $24,717,000, and actual expenditures came in at $17,614,000. So it was $7.1 million under budget. Next is the fund balance. The ending fund balance at the end of the year was $75,263,000. Of that amount, 54% was net investment in capital assets, which was $40,775,000, and that left the unrestricted at 46%, or $34,487,000. The next slide just shows the cash ending balances at the end of last year and this year. At the end of 23, cash was $29,575,000. At the end of this year, cash was $34,082,000. So it was up $4.5 million over the prior year. Then kind of on the flip side of the cash, we've got the outstanding debt. Loans outstanding, I've got those all listed there. I won't read all those out, but the total loans at the end of the year outstanding were $15,474,000. There were no new loans this year, and the outstanding loan balance went down $1.4 million from the prior year. Next is the outstanding bonds. Again, there's no new bonds this year, the same as last year. The total at the end of the year was $12,056,000, which was down $1.1 million over the prior year. I think that was my last slide. So I'll leave it open if anyone has any questions for either me or Richard, or you would go back over any slide.
Anyone have any questions?
I do. On the slide with the revenues that says non-GAAP, the pie chart, it's on page 21.
Okay.
The AARP grant, is that the $35 million?
Yes.
So what? We didn't get that money. We are drawing from it it's promised, and we're drawing it down.
On a reimbursable basis. And so that's how about the 2.8 million was what was drawn down during the fiscal year this past year.
So that only represents the 2.8?
2.8 that was what was drawn down during that current year.
Thank you. That's what I needed to know.
There's a chart in the back of the audit report that shows like the total authorization versus how much you have drawn down.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion to accept the audit report? So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. We have accepted the audit presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And now our next item of business is the fiscal year 24-25 financial presentation for our first quarter. Mr. Balmer.
Okay, finish one fiscal year and let's talk about a new one.
Start another one.
Yeah. So as you know, we provide the board with quarterly financial updates. I think this is the third year maybe that we're doing that. Just a quick analysis of it, and we'll cover this in the slides, but as you know, we typically follow a certain format. In the first one each year, we give you the budget ordinance kind of as a point of reference, and then we'll drop that in the subsequent ones as we go through the year. Then we'll cover revenues, fund balance, expenses by department, and lastly, we have a separate section for the I-85 project. Since that is a capital project with multi-years, we cover that separately. So a lot of this will look the same that you've seen in the past. As always, if the board has some information they'd like to see presented differently or some tweaks to the presentation, please feel free to let me know at the end of the presentation and we can have future quarters reflect that. Just briefly to cover the ordinance, kind of bring us back into the fiscal year. I know it's been a while since we passed budget, but our revenues for this year, we budgeted $6.3 million in water, $9.35 million in wastewater, non-billing revenue of $472,800, and interest income of $432,540 for total revenues of $16,555,340. On the next page, you'll see the breakdown by department. We won't go through all those, but again, you see the total expenditures are the same, $16,555,340. The next slide, Crystal. So we'll jump right into revenues. So the water revenues, of course, we're at the end of the first quarter, so you would hope that your revenues are 25% or greater. Your expenditures are 25% or less. It means that we're on target. Water revenue, we said it's budgeted at 6.3. Thus far, we have slightly more than 1.7 million. You'll see that's 28%. So we're already coming in above projections. Don't get too excited yet because we're in the first quarter. So sometimes that evens out through the year. But if that trend were to hold, we would see a similar situation in last year where the budget would need to be amended at year end and we'd see a significant increase. But again, I wouldn't speculate on that this early in the year. Sewer revenue is the next slide. Budget is $9.35 million. The revenue itself is slightly over almost 2.6 million, 28%. Same situation there. Non-billing revenue, next slide. It's $472,800. Just as a reminder, non-billing revenue is mostly your customer-related service fees. That includes your non-payment fees, your late fees, transfer fees, any kind of fee related to a customer service. The first quarter is $127,206, which is 27%, so we're doing fine there. Those are right on target. Interest income, a biggie. We've been talking about this one for about a year. Wow. As a reminder, during the budget session, we started budget last year in January and February with the Finance Committee. We passed the budget in May. When we were drafting the budget to bring to the board, the Federal Reserve, all economists said the Federal Reserve is going to start dropping rates 0.25% and 0.5%. And by next fiscal year, we expect at least 3 rate cuts. That did not occur, as all of you know. The first cut was 2 months ago, and then again this week. So that's reflected in your first quarter interest income because we based all of our budget projections on the Fed starting reducing rates March of 2024, and they didn't do that, of course. So I say that to say that the budget of $432,000, you're seeing the first quarter we've almost reached that goal, $409,000. So we've basically earned enough interest income in the first quarter to already meet our budget goals. At the rate that they're reducing it now, I still think we're going to have significant interest revenue over and above our budget. So as last year, when we get closer to year end, we will be bringing a budget amendment to the board accordingly. Next slide, system development fees. Just as a reminder to the board, system development fees are a little bit of a different animal than other revenues, and we capture and account for those differently. The board earmarks those each year for a specific project. So we budget conservatively because we don't know what kind of developments are coming online. I think, and Scott may have a little more insight into this, but as we start building developments again, we may have a better projection of what's coming down the road each year now. But right now it's kind of been a one-off situation, so we've stuck with, since we can't use that for operating expenses anyway, we stuck with conservatively budgeting at zero. You'll see that thus far in the first quarter, we collected a little over $63,000. Not significant income, but at year end, we will bring a resolution to the board to decide where you want that money spent. That's it for the revenue section. Any questions on revenue before we go into fund balance? Okay, so we'll go into fund balance. There's only one slide for fund balance. Of course, by the next quarter, we'll have more budget amendments, so we usually split that up into 2 slides to make it a little more easily readable. You'll see that we've had, in the first quarter, which ended September 30th, we had 5 budget amendments. And you'll see I tried to capture a description for each of those. BA1 was basically reappropriating software for the new financial software that we thought we were going to start last year, but we didn't get around to it, didn't get implemented yet. We rolled that forward into the new year. BA2 basically rolled over a few repairs and maintenance and capital projects that didn't get completed by June 30th of 24. That was rolling the unexpended budget into this year. So both of those really had no impact on fund balance because the money stayed in fund balance last year. We're just rolling into a new year. Budget Amendment 3 was just shifting things around inter-department, so it had no true effect on fund balance. And then, of course, with BA4, the board approved the construction administration and construction oversight services and the railroad fees and mitigation fees related to I-85. That budget amendment was nearly $6 million, and as you'll recall, that's designated fund balance. And then BA5 was several CIP projects that the board had approved on the CIP plan. Those are appropriated in that budget so that Scott and the operational team can begin those projects. So the total effect on fund balance first quarter, slightly over 1.1 million, almost 1.2, almost 10.2 million. But of that, only 216,000 was affecting operating fund balance. The rest came out of capital improvement fund balance. And of that 216,000, only 7,900 was truly an impact to fund balance. The rest was just rolling things forward from a prior year. So at the end of the first quarter, I think we should all feel comfortable that we've only expended 7,900 of unbudgeted, unplanned fund balance. Any questions on fund balance?
Fantastic.
That's good news, Jeff. Okay, we'll jump into expenses. Again, expenses, you want them to be 25% or less this time of year. Administration, and what I did started last year to help the board see, we put one bar for original budget, and then we put what the amended budget is at the end of each quarter. So you'll see the amended budget for the administration department is 1.3 million, and expended at the end of the first quarter was just under 225,000, 17%. We're in good shape there. Human resources, amended budget slightly over 176,000, expended slightly over 58,000, 33%. That's above our 25% goal, but I'll tell you a disclosure on a couple of these slides, as you've heard in the past, those of you that have been in these presentations. There's 2 things skewing that number. The software for HR is paid on July 1st. So you pay a whole annual premium July 1st, that skews your numbers. And the other thing is the board approved a pay study, and that has been encumbered in this first quarter. So those 2 things are skewing when you talk about $176,000 budget. Those 2 things can skew your percentage. So I'm telling you that it's in good shape, it's in fine shape. And if you were to prorate those, you'll see that that percentage will come more in line with 50% by the end of the second quarter and 75% by the end of the third quarter. Next slide. The engineering department, the original and amended budget, I haven't had any budget amendments, is slightly over 516,000. First quarter expenditures is slightly under 31,000. That's at 6%. The reason that's at 6%, of course, is you still have an engineering vacancy in that department. Billing and collections. The billing and collections budget is the original and amended is slightly over 530,000, expended slightly under 119,000, 22%. We're in good shape there. And that percentage is even lower if you consider that the billing and collection software was prepaid July 1st. So it's really even lower than the 22%. Next slide, water treatment. Water treatment budget hasn't changed. It's slightly, it's just under 2.1 million. Expended just over $416,000, 20%. In good shape there. Next slide, wastewater treatment. The amended budget is just under $2.6 million, expended just over $446,000, 17%. Good shape in that department. Utility maintenance, and just a reminder, utility maintenance includes water line maintenance, sewer line maintenance, meter reading, and pump station and tower maintenance. It's a combination of those 4 departments. The budget is slightly over $3.3 million, expended slightly over $527,000, 16%. So we're in good shape there. The last real department before we get to debt service and some capital project departments is depreciation board and other. As you'll recall from past years of the 2.7 amended budget, the largest chunk of that is depreciation. Not true operating expenses, but depreciation. So far this year, we've expended in the first quarter just under $772,000. That's at 28%. Remember that your P&L insurance, property and liability insurance, and your workers' comp insurance premiums come due July 1st. That's the largest chunk of your budget. So the largest operating expense in that department was prepaid July 1st. That's why you're at 28%. That department is fine. Those won't have further expenditures this year. Projects and studies. The budget is amended at $11.4 million. Remember, there's a lot of projects in this department, the largest of it being the I-85 project. But you've got your other projects for lead and copper and several others that the board has approved. We've expended just under $2.2 million in the first quarter, 19%. And of course, that department, depending on the timing of the projects and whether they cross years, that's going to fluctuate some, but it's on target for where we expect it to be. Next department is the wild card. That's our debt service department. The budget is slightly under $3.8 million. We've only expended $294,000, 8%. Everybody would be excited about that number. Remember, our debt payments do not come evenly every month or every quarter. A lot of our larger debt payments come in the spring, and all the USDA debt is once a year, and that's June 1st. So you'll see that number unusually low, that percentage, until we get to the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden, boom, it'll be at 100%. I can assure you that it is on target to be materially the same as budget. Anything on expenditures or expenses? No? Okay, we'll cover the I-85 project. This one's a little more complex, of course. The first slide we're going to cover on the I-85 project is strictly the ARPA funded part of the project. So as you'll see, the only thing we have here for budget in the blue is the phase 2 design, which is just over $5.7 million. And that, of course, is the CDM Smith engineering contract carryover from last year, continuing into this year. And you see the various fiscal years that how much we've expended each year. The total spent through the end of the first quarter of this year is just under $5.4 million. And the ARPA funding you'll see is that exact same number. So we have gotten back at the end of the first quarter all the money that we have expended with CDM Smith. We have drawn that back down through reimbursements. I will note that will change in the second quarter because of the ARPA funding for this particular contract. They are withholding a 15% retainage, if you will, until a certain point, maybe in January or February. So at the end of the second quarter, you will see that the ARPA funding is falling short of what we paid out. But that will catch up once they release that retainage. Next slide. The next slide is the SGWASA funded. These are the items that the board has approved to be spent out of capital improvement fund balance. That budget right now is $2.8 million. You see a breakdown of how that money has been allocated and appropriated. The largest chunk, of course, is for the legal services related to the project and the easement acquisition, the $1.4 million for the easement acquisition itself, and then your various licenses fees, mitigation fees, and that sort of thing. You'll see the various years outlined there for you. Spent this year thus far is just under $1.4 million. Spent to date thus far is just under $2.2 million. So we're about 77% of the board approved appropriation expended at the end of the first quarter. Then we'll have a brief financial summary, and then we'll have questions. So just to kind of capture it all on a brief summary, the revenue for the year, as you saw, is trending slightly higher than the expectations, but it's materially comparable to budget. If those revenue projections continue to be to exceed budgetary projections, then we will bring a budget amendment for the extra revenue. Non-billing revenues are trending above expectations slightly, but they may, again, first quarter is a little too early to tell. Interest income we talked about earlier is significantly higher, and that will be a budget amendment in the future. Operating fund balance appropriations, as we talked about, are very reasonable, especially the ones that are truly impacting fund balance. Designated CIP fund balance appropriations are significant, but the board knows that because you approved it for the 95 project and some other large projects. That's what it's sitting there for. The departmental expenses overall are materially comparable. There's a few line items within the departments that we're working with the department superintendents on that may need some budget amendments in the future, but right now they're still on track. And that's the end of the presentation. Any questions?
Any questions?
Very good.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Richard. And now for our, this was information only, so this next item is our cash policy revisions.
Oh, that's not too.
Don't go too far.
Yeah, don't go too far, Richard.
I forgot that wasn't even on there. I thought I had done my part and I was going to run it. Okay, let's get to that. Okay, the cash policy, it's been a while. So we are in the process of going through all of our policies and procedures and doing some updates, some tweaks, and as we implement the new software, there's going to be some more changes. Most of them are internal standard operating procedures, trying to fine-tune some things, improve some things, increase efficiency. But in doing that and going through the policies, I thought it prudent to go ahead and update this one and bring it a little more up to date. So the first policy was passed March 13, 2007 by the board. That was the original cash investment policy required. And then, of course, we made a brief tweak to it, or the board did, on June 14th of 2011. That change was just to allow us to invest in capital management trust. Up until then, the board approved policy only allowed us to keep money at Truist Bank. And of course, we wanted higher investment earnings. So the board authorized us to have a North Carolina Capital Management Trust account. And since then, the board has authorized 2 accounts. We have one for capital improvement funding and one for excess regular fund balance, unappropriated fund balance. The red line version is pretty straight. I'll just go through what we're changing. On page 41 of your agenda, we basically, the finance director shall furnish a mid-year financial report. That was in the original policy. I'm providing the board with a monthly interim financial report, and then of course the quarterly updates. So we just changed that from mid-year to monthly. At the bottom of that page in the cash receipts section, general statutes changed, and they changed the maximum cash that you can have on hand at the end of the day from $250 to $500. That's just an operating environment change. Of course, $250 doesn't get you very far these days. So we just made this policy reflect the most current general statute change and increased the $250 to $500. It also says that the finance director, in reading it, if you follow the letter of the law, the finance director himself or herself is actually taking the daily deposit to the bank, and that doesn't always happen. So we changed it to say, or designee. And depending on the bank, sometimes they don't give you a stamp anymore. They give you a little receipt like you do when you pay a bill. So I changed that wording to say a receipt from the bank in a manner determined acceptable by the finance director, because they truly don't take the old days where they take your deposit ticket, stamp it, and that's what you've got. Just a tweak. Page 42, really the only change is to correct the spelling error and to change the bank from SunTrust to Truist, just to reflect that merger change. At the bottom of page 43, there was a paragraph in the old policy that said attempts will be made to consolidate payments to one vendor. All checks shall be mailed the week after the monthly check run, so forth and so on. I took that completely out because that's something we do standard operating procedures anyway. And then the last page pretty much is just changing the thing to say that the payroll is in accordance with personnel policy. Because the payroll schedule is no longer handled by the finance department. It's handled now by the executive director and the HR manager, which is outlined in the payroll policy. So the personnel policy. So we just changed that. And so if the board approves, Crystal will have a copy for the chairman to execute at the end of the meeting. And then the SGWASA, the executive director's recommendation is that the SGWASA board of directors adopt the cash management investment policy revisions as seen and read. Any questions on that item?
I make a motion to approve the recommendation by the executive director.
Okay, we have a motion to approve to adopt the cash management investment policy revisions. We got a second. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Now next item of business is utility vehicle purchase. And Mr. Executive Director, you want to take this?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I asked Richard if he wanted to do everything tonight, and he said no, he would sit down after that last item. So, Richard, thank you.
I'll be back.
Yeah, he'll be back right after this because we've got to bring him back up for some budget amendments related to some items we have this evening. So, in summary, we're seeking the board's approval for the purchase of two new vehicles, pickup trucks for our utilities department. And our utilities department basically does our wastewater collections and our water distribution as far as our utility out there. So we try to keep our vehicles as long as we can. And usually we look at starting to trade in and purchase new vehicles once they're about 8 years old at a minimum and 100,000 plus miles. So we're requesting to replace with new vehicles, 2 trucks this year from our utilities department. Both are medium duty trucks used for our utility work. And I've provided for you in the analysis section the vehicle number that's being replaced. One is a 2010 medium duty vehicle with approximately 136,000 miles on it. And the other vehicle is a 2009 heavy duty vehicle with approximately 110,000 miles on it. So as you can see, we're staying within our qualifiers when we analyze our fleet for replacement. We have one vehicle in the analysis section, number 3170, the 2010 model, that's talked about. It was scheduled for replacement previously, but took the place of a fire damaged vehicle. So we had a vehicle damaged by fire a year or so ago. And it resulted in an insurance claim. And the insurance claim paid us just over $58,000 for the residual value of the fire damaged vehicle. The second vehicle to be purchased or replaced in 2009, as we talked about. And we're talking about actually downsizing that vehicle from a heavy duty more to a medium duty vehicle. So these items are in the budget for us this year. One item was for replacement. The other one, we need a budget amendment for the replacement of the vehicle. But in summary, through our procurement under our Carolina State contract, we contacted several dealerships that abide by the state contract, talked to them about their pricing and availability, and that's key. It's not just the pricing, it's the availability, and the board is aware that we've had some challenges over the last couple of years with availability of vehicles. So we're looking to purchase and recommend 2025 model year vehicles from Piedmont Truck in Greensboro, North Carolina. And we have a proposal from them for this vehicle, and you can see that cost in the table at the bottom of the page of 45. We have purchased vehicles in the past from Piedmont Truck in Greensboro, and we've been pleased with their sales and service and support for that acquisition. So we are looking at this year recommending medium duty 2025 Ford F-250 regular cab trucks, a quantity of 2 at $58,738.11 each, for a total of $117,476.22. And that total price excludes the tax and title fees for those vehicles. So that is the recommendation to purchase the 2 new F-250 trucks for the utility department, and the SGWASA staff will upfit the trucks to include the emblems, the GPS, and so on and so forth. So in terms of the financials, we've laid out the financials for you in terms of our approved budget, which included $72,360 to replace 1 heavy-duty vehicle, And again, as I mentioned, we've looked at the type of vehicle that is best recommended for the team now, and that's to move that down to a more of a medium duty type of truck. There's some net savings, if you will, by doing that compared to the budget. So due to that downgrading of that truck, that leaves us a balance of just over $13,000 in the budget for that specific item. Focusing on the second medium duty truck, which will be funded in part through the insurance claim. The proposed cost of the truck is just a little bit more than the insurance claim, but leaving a balance of just over $191 in terms of what's necessary to make that acquisition. A budget amendment is required for the outstanding balance of the vehicle, and the downsizing and budget amendment number 7 for this transaction is found later in your meeting agenda. So my recommendation is the Board of Directors approve the purchase of 2 new Ford F-250 trucks from Piedmont Trucks in Greensboro, North Carolina for $58,738.11 each, for a total of $117,476.22, excluding taxes and tags. Be happy to answer any questions the board members have.
Anyone have any questions?
How much is taxes and tags? And why is it not included?
Well, I don't have the exact number for that. I did work with our finance team. That's something I provide to you following this meeting. I wasn't sure if it should be included in this purchase or not, but I'd be happy to provide you with that information.
So will we need to do another budget amendment for that money too?
Let me ask Richard about that.
Yeah, Scott, I've captured that in the budget amendment. So you will see, even though that's not in the approval to purchase the truck because it's not paid to Piedmont Truck, you will see that separated out in the budget amendment.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Richard. And when you get to that, maybe you can point to that as well for us. Okay, well, thank you.
Any other questions?
Questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions on the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. And now item 14 is a meter replacement program, Vanguard Utilities. Mr. Troya.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, board members, the next 3 items are related to CIP 102-05, which is the water meter upgrade project. And we have a couple of components here associated with CIP 102-05. And one is a meter and hardware supplies acquisition, and another is a contract for installation services. So you'll see that laid out over the next couple of items here, 14, 15, and 16. What I provided for you here on item 14 is the first item is Vanguard Utility Services award of contract. Now, this is the service company that will do the meter installation. So let me just kind of walk you through the background here, and then I'll touch on the analysis and the procurement, and then you'll see this background repeated on the next couple of items in the analysis so we can walk through this. And the reason I have this on the page for you is I wanted you to be able to appreciate the total picture of what is being expensed on this project, because it all does come together for this one CIP. So just to touch on the background, SGWASA has approximately 6,600 water meters in its service area. And since the creation of SGWASA, the authority has required several municipal utility systems. And due to these acquisitions, SGWASA has assumed responsibility for managing the various makes, models, and retypes, both manual and automatic, of the water meters. So this conglomeration of non-standardized water meters across SGWASA service area places SGWASA in a demanding situation when it comes to reading meters, updating meters, replacing meters, and so on and so forth. So to overcome these challenges with meter management, in 2021, the utility management team members, along with administration, finance, and utility engineer, developed a water meter upgrade plan, and we placed that into action in 2022. And so far to date, this upgrade plan has been very successful. And some of our board members may remember where we did about a 500 meter manual water meter changeout program a couple of years ago. Manual reads is what we were doing. We didn't have any automation, so our team members upgraded those meters. So this is part of that continuous improvement program to upgrade our technology and our reading capabilities. One of our largest meter areas in the city of Creedmoor service area has approximately 2,200 plus water meters in the ground in that area. When looking at a meter replacement program for that service area, due to the quantity of the water meters in that area to be replaced, we determined the best strategy to complete that change out or that upgrade project in a timely manner was to hire a meter installation service company versus having our team do it instead. So to initiate the service area upgrade, Creedmoor Service Area Water Meter Upgrade Project, we created and funded a capital improvement project, which we've discussed here this evening as CIP 102-05. And it's identified in our approved 10-year CIP schedule at a cost of $1 million. So CIP 102-05 is comprised of two components. As I mentioned, a water meter installation services contract, which we're talking about here in item 14, and also the purchase of water meters and associated hardware for that, and those are the subsequent items that we'll be talking about this evening. So in terms of the service installation portion, to initiate this service installation portion of this program in July of 2024, we issued requests for proposals for the water meter replacement program. The proposals were received in late August of 2024. We received only two proposals. One proposal was from Professional Meters Incorporated at a total bid of $445,897, and the second proposal was from Vanguard Utility Services with a total of bid price of $189,949. You'll see on page 48 a bid tabulation is found in the table mentioning the items that were bid, the quantities, the unit prices, and the totals for those two companies. The disparity of cost between the bidders is related to the proposal item reference number 2. That's the removal and replacement of the meter setter. And the best way for me to describe that is a meter setter is a piece of hardware that's in the ground that actually holds the meter, and it's plumbed to our water line and also the private water service line, if you will, going to the structure, the residence, or the business. And the meter setters that we have in the ground, many of them are very old, and we anticipate that some are going to break in this meter change out. So we anticipate about 25% could break during this meter change out program. So we put a cost in for that, and then we had follow-up conversations with both vendors about their costs and how they looked at moving through that construction, if you will, to replace those setters. And after discussions with both vendors, and more specifically Vanguard Utility Services, Vanguard understands the proposal in terms of the scope of work that's going to be required, and they are standing by their bid price for this item. Therefore, SGWASA recognizes Vanguard Utility Services Incorporated as the lowest and most responsible bidder. In terms of recommendation, recommending Vanguard Utility Services Company. And I think what's important here before we get to the financials is the schedule. So should the board approve this item, then staff will work with SGWASA's attorney to finalize the contract with the vendor. The scope of work provides the vendor 18 months to complete the project. Now, why is that? Well, we've had issues over the last couple of years with the procurement of water meters in terms of delivery. So sometimes it was taking 3, 6, 9, 12 months to get water meters in stock through supply chain. So when we put this scope together, we thought, well, we want to give them enough time to get the meters in, since we will be purchasing the meters, to get those in stock. So we have that length of time. In addition to that, we need to schedule the meter replacement work to be implemented in such a way that it will not interfere with the financial software upgrade that is currently being implemented. So in other words, we don't want to be changing software and changing meters out at the same time. So we just have to be very careful how we do that and coordinate that. And our meters routes, our meters are set up in certain routes as well. That's how they were designed. So we've worked with our finance team, and they prefer that we change out whole routes at a time, if you will, when we're doing the billing, just for coordination purposes and reading purposes. So staff will keep the board of directors informed on the start and completion dates of this project. In terms of the financials, so I have for you on page 49, a Creedmoor meter change out cost summary table. We're going to be focusing on the bottom portion of that table, which is contract services for meter installation. So I'll just kind of cover for you at the top. The board approved $1 million for the purchase and installation of the new water meters. The proposed purchase The water meters and associated hardware is just over $753,000, which will leave a balance of $246,000 for the additional water meter hardware purchase from both Miller Supply and from Core and Main, and will leave us contract installation services with Vanguard Utility Services at a total cost of just under $200,000. So out of our $1 million, once you put all those components together, we have a remaining balance of just over $4,500. And again, you can see those costs associated with this project in the table shown below on page 49. And we have a supporting budget amendment, BA6, I believe, follows these items for this. So in this table, again, I want the board members to appreciate all the components associated with this CIP. And more specifically, I'm asking for, in addition to the base costs, not only for items that we'll be purchasing, but for the services, some contingency. So more specifically for this item, for the Vanguard Utility Services award of contract, I'm recommending Vanguard as the utility service company for the installation at $189,949, and requesting a 5% contingency be added of $9,497.45, which would bring our contract services for meter installation total cost to $199,446.45. In terms of the recommendation, requesting the board approve a contract with Vanguard Utility Services Incorporated for the removal and replacement of water meters for the not to exceed amount of $189,949, and be given authority to review and approve change orders relating to unexpected conditions in amount of $9,497.45, and 2, to allow the SGWASA Executive Director, Finance Director, and Attorney to finalize and execute a contract with Vanguard Utility Services Incorporated. A lot of information, great program. Looking forward to getting the old meters out and the new meters in over the next several months. Be happy to answer any questions the board has regarding this portion of this program.
I have a question. Why such the large discrepancy between professional meters and Vanguard on the remove and replace meter center?
Well, they believe that based on the number of 500 units that are going to be out there, that there's going to be a lot of removal of concrete and asphalt and excavation involved with these. So they actually bid their unit price based on that for 500 of those units. Looking at that. That was basically what they said when they were questioned about that. The other vendor looks at that and says, we don't believe that we're going to run into 500 meter setters that have to be changed out. And we believe most of that will happen in the ground or in the meter pit, and we'll be able to manage that directly in there without that other additional construction or demolition that has to go on. So we did have a great conversation about it. And I said, so you're holding firm to your price? They said, yes, we are. I said, okay. Any other questions?
So it says that the scope of the work provides that a vendor will be 18 months to complete.
Mm-hmm.
So that's May of 2026. So that is based on delivery of the meters. And what happens, what is happening with the old meters? Where do they go?
Sure. So when the meters are, let me just talk about the process as best as I can as far as the actual construction would go. So we'll order the meters and have them. These are basically the residential meters that will come in. We'll have those at our warehouse as they're delivered. And then we anticipate that the vendor will go out route by route, and a route can have 50 meters or it can have 1,000 meters in the route. And they will take the new meters out to the site in Creedmoor, and they'll actually have a storage container. So when the old meters are taken out of the ground, they're actually put into or embargoed in basically a container. And then we GPS their location. We have all the information written down as far as what the meter number was, the location, the read, and we actually have that physical meter. And we tag that whole crate of meters to say, this is the area that was done, this is the route, these are the days, this is where this came from. We then take those meters back to our utility warehouse, and they're stored basically through the end of the project. So the reason that we do that is twofold. Number one, if there's any discrepancy in a read or we need that additional information, we can simply go back to that container, pull up that information, find that meter, and say this is the reading that was captured. To verify that may happen. But on an annual basis, in terms of disposal of that asset, that's handled through the auction, basically. So we have an asset auction on an annual basis. So at some point, and I can't say it'll be the summer of 2025, but at some point we will have those meters, and we'll be able to put them in our auction. And it may be over the course of 2 fiscal years, for example.
So you did say that the meters, the delivery of the meters could be a delay problem.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we sole sourcing these meters if we know before we even start that there's probably going to be a delay?
That's the next one.
Well,
Voted on that part of it. Chose
our sole source is the Neptune Meter Company, and that was decided years ago. That's something that we're going with. So I think that trying to introduce another meter into, if that's what your question is leading to, why are we not selecting another meter?
No. I'm just saying if we, because I know Kenneth asked the question about the meters if they were sole source, and we were good with that. But now we're kind of being told there could be a delay in getting the meters that we need. If we know that going into it, why are we going with these meters?
Well,
and we're spending the money now, but this will be in the next budget year, right?
I don't, from an operational standpoint, I can't control the delivery of the units. The only thing I can do is say that when we set up a contract, that if I set up a contract that goes 90 days or 180 days, and I can't source that contract during that period, then I have a problem. We can't fulfill that contract period. If you factor in the financial software that we're upgrading at the same time, this has to be kind of a measured approach. So we're kind of facing two battles here. We've got this upgrade of our software that we're doing. We don't want to be too aggressive on the meter change out with these accounts and these readings. And second, we have to be able to respond to the market in terms of how the delivery is going. So when we put this RFP together last summer, or earlier this summer, and pushed this out, we were told that you could be delayed months and months and months from getting these meters. In fact, the meters that we had purchased in the last 18 months was taking about 18 months to get certain meters in. So we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of length on this contract to perform this work. Now, I will tell you that when the board approved the 200 plus meters back in September for the new subdivisions, we put our order in shortly thereafter. The board approved that, and we got the meters within 35 days. So I'm hoping that will be the same, that we'll actually have these in stock, and the meter delivery won't be the problem. It will be just the coordination to ensure that we can do it in a very systematic approach to ensure the accuracy of the change out and the readings and the incorporation then into the new software.
So Vanguard is the service company.
Correct.
So they will get paid after all the meters are in? Do you have any idea what they're expecting for payment? We're not going to pay them up front. Are they going to be paid when 50% of the meters are in, and then the balance when they're done? Or?
Okay, so this service contract has a unit cost per meter. Which is remove of existing water meter and install of new e-coder meter, complete in place, including mobilization and recording of meter information. So if they successfully install 30 meters, then the following month they could bill us for 30 meters, that type of thing. So it's kind of piecework, if you will.
That's fine.
Right. So the items following this, the next items are for the purchase. So that is something that we will purchase and then supply to this vendor to do the installation.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I remember correctly, Raleigh purchased the same ones.
Correct.
So they should be available a little faster since Raleigh also ordered them.
Well, they're doing a better job with their stock and delivery now.
Correct.
That's basically what we're being told too, which is great for the program. So we will get this program started ASAP. Again, I just don't want to step on the finance director and all the great work he's doing on this changeover of this finance software.
Is there any further questions? I just have one. Is 5% contingency enough?
That's what I
My
was
budget
wondering.
says it is.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about, the contingency.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what I was wondering about, the contingency.
Okay.
yeah.
All right. As long as you're comfortable with that,
Yeah,
I
I
know.
wanted to keep the entire program within $1 million because that's basically
Okay.
what the CIP is. So I've set it up, and normally we'll ask the board for maybe a 10%, 5%, 10% contingency. So when I looked at this, I thought that looking at the program itself and what we're working on, I think that the contingency recommendations for not only this item but the subsequent items is sufficient for the program.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions, comments? Then we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. All those in, is there any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. And now on to item 15, our meter replacement program, CIP number 102-05, water meter upgrade project, sole source purchase of water meters with Core and Main Company.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So board members, page 51, your background section is pretty much a copy and paste of what we just covered in the previous item, and you'll see that again on item 16 coming up. So if I can take you to page 52, the analysis section, I have two items here. Now this item focuses on purchasing the water meters from Core and Main Company. So with the cost of the water meter installation service known, SGWASA sought proposals for the purchase of the Neptune brand water meters, SGWASA standard water meter, and associated hardware components needed for this project. And Neptune water meters have proven to be very reliable for SGWASA for many years. In 2020, SGWASA standardized its water meter technology on the Neptune brand. And to date, SGWASA continues to invest in Neptune to provide greater enhancements for water meter reading and data processing. Core and Main Company is the local supplier of the Neptune brand water meters. Therefore, SGWASA procured a proposal from Core and Main for the purchase of the new water meters. The Neptune water meter that SGWASA has specified for this project is the Neptune Mach 10 R9001, which is the same meter that the board saw just a couple months ago for our new subdivisions. That was the September board meeting. The board authorized that purchase. The next item, Miller Supply Company proposed purchase. I just wanted to point out, because you'll see this in the next item, and I thought it was important to show you the entire package once again, that Core and Main Company is providing us with the water meters and some pieces of hardware, plumbing supplies for those meters. But there were some other items for this project that when we shopped around, we found that Miller Supply Company had better prices for us. So we'll be talking about that purchase on the next item here coming up after this one. This one focuses on Neptune as a sole source for us. I provided for you a summary table at the bottom of the page 52, which is talking about the Neptune Mach 10 water meters, total cost, meter materials, which is very, very small. We have a subtotal of $724,893.78. And I'm asking for a 4% contingency to be added, which is $28,995.75, which the total meter materials for Core and Main is $753,889.53. On the following page, 53 of your agenda, very similar information as far as the recommendation, the schedule, and the financials related to this project. And again, you have a summary table of Creedmoor meter changeout cost summary reflecting the meters, the meter purchase from Core and Main, also Miller Supply, which we'll talk about in the next item, and your contract services for meter installation for us. So my recommendation is the SGWASA Board of Directors approve the purchase of Neptune brand water meters and associated water meter hardware from Core and Main for the not to exceed amount of $724,893.78, and be given authority to review and approve change orders relating to the project in an amount not to exceed $28,995.75 without further board approval. Thank you.
Any questions?
So we're going with Core and Main or Miller's?
So this one is specifically for Core and Main. This is the major vendor here for the meter purchase and some hardware. The meter materials is very low at only $248, obviously.
Oh,
so
and there's another one.
Right, so the majority of the materials, we went with the next vendor, which is the next item for Miller Supply. So Miller Supply, Core and Main, and Vanguard are basically the vendors we have that support this program.
Okay, any questions? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? We shall go to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it. Motion carries. And now we're at item 16, our meter replacement program, CIP number 102-05, water meter upgrade project, water meter hardware purchase with Miller Supply Company.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the third item in this series related to this CIP. So what is different in this memo for you? So the background is the same as the previous memos the board has taken a look at. If I take you to the analysis section on page 55, you will see a call out for Miller Supply Company proposed purchase. And we've already discussed this. In addition to the water meters being purchased from Core and Main companies, SGWASA will also need to purchase additional water meter hardware from Miller Supply Company. The purchase of the additional hardware from Miller Supply Company at $42,131.72 requires board approval. I have provided for you in the procurement section just a snippet of the table related to the costs related to Miller Supply. And I've also requested a 4% contingency be added to that, bringing that total to $42,131.72. Again, this item is part of BA6 as well as the other two items. And again, on page 56 is a summary table of the entire program for you. And my recommendation is the Board of Directors approve the purchase of miscellaneous water meter hardware from Miller Supply from the not to exceed amount of $40,511.27 and be given authority to review and approve change orders relating to the project in an amount not to exceed $1,620.45 without further board approval.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Scott, who will service these if they malfunction? Will our utility staff be able to maintain them?
Well, there's warranty information, or there's warranty available on all the meters, number one. We have 2 dedicated meter techs, meter readers that work on that. We also have other utility team members that can work on these meters as well.
Is there some training for them so that they know how these meters work, or are all meters the same? They can't possibly be.
Well, this is a new brand of meter for us, so I believe we've already had some training on this, but we can continue to get updated on the training for this as necessary. What's interesting is as technology is improving, there is less hardware components functioning within the meters anymore. So we're moving to an ultrasonic meter versus a mechanical meter, which is a great upgrade for us. It's more accurate in low volume water as well as high volume water for us. So getting easier.
I'm just thinking, if an installation company is doing the installing and our utility crews are not involved in that installation, you know, there's a knowledge gap there.
Right. Okay. So that's a good point. So let me say this. I have a project manager in the audience, Joel Coates, who's with us this evening. So his job is to coordinate the installation as well. So we don't just set it and forget it and turn them loose. We actually have coordination and people checking on them as well. And we can bring in our meter team, our meter techs as well for any conversations, anything that's an anomaly that needs to be looked at. But they follow up very closely right after that because our team, once the meters are in the ground and they're functioning, so over the course of, let's call it 8 months instead of 18 months. So over the course of that eight month period, as meters are put in the ground and they're functioning, we're now making those reads. Our utility team is now following up and doing those reads. So this program isn't one where you wait till the end to activate them. They're activated as soon as they go in, basically, and then you would start your read. So we have the ability for coordination right from the beginning during this program to make sure they're installed correctly, they're functioning correctly, and there are no problems with the reads.
So from a customer's point of view, where right now every once in a while a customer will say, something's wrong with this meter, I'm not using that much water.
Right.
If these are ultrasonic, there really isn't very much room for, there's something wrong with my meter.
That is very correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can still have meters tested if they believe there is an issue, or we believe there is an issue, but the data that's gathered within these meters, and these are smart meters, we are not using smart technology in terms of having them report every 15 minutes. They have that capability, but we do have the capability to go in and interrogate that meter, run a report, and show what that consumption is, time of day, how much water, whatever, through a certain period of time. So we can grab that information out and share that with the customer to say, this is what is occurring,
It's more precise.
2 a.m., 3 a.m., 7 a.m., and this is the amount of water. So we can show them that profile.
Okay.
Okay, now we have a motion and we have a second. If there's no other questions on the motion, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. And now we get Richard back to the plate for budget amendment number 6, item 17.
We'll go fast because I'm the only person standing between you and adjournment. So budget amendment is number 6 and 7 are covering the items you just approved. Budget amendment number 6 is covering the meter replacement program. I will highlight the numbers as we go through because Scott was talking about the 1 million and there's 4,500 left out of the 1 million. But you'll notice that our budget amendment is going to be for $947,075. That's simply the difference of the tax because tax is not appropriated, it's refunded. So we're appropriating less money than the 1 million. So that leaves, Scott, you may make a note in your CIP plan that does leave you
We'll spend it.
some extra money for contingency is
Right.
what I'm saying. Right.
Thank you.
So just the history of the budget amendments thus far, as we kind of covered in our previous presentation for financials, you've approved 5 budget amendments thus far this year. The total of those budget amendments is slightly under 10.2 million. This budget amendment will increase revenues by transferring from fund balance $947,075. That expenditure will go into the projects and studies department, $947,075. There will be a new project set up for capital meter replacement. BA6, the supporting document for that is enclosed in your agendas. You'll see I did break down $747,628 for the parts and supplies, and then the actual vendor services is $199,447. That totals your $947,075. The executive director's recommendation is that the board of directors approve budget amendment number 6.
Any questions for Richard?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions on the motion? If not, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed likewise. Ayes have it, motion carries. Now we're on to budget amendment number 7.
Budget amendment number 7 is related to the 2 utility trucks the board approved purchasing earlier in the evening. You'll see that now we have a total budget amendments, including the number 6 that you just approved, of $11.1 million. This budget amendment is for $49,116. We're transferring from fund balance $49,116. We're putting it in the utilities worldwide maintenance department. That's where these 2 vehicles are assigned for $49,116. As Scott mentioned earlier, and one of the board members had a question, you'll see that this budget amendment, if you look in the supporting document in your agenda, that this budget amendment is comprised of the $45,116 approved to purchase the actual vehicle. That's the extra needed to purchase the 2 versus the 1. And you have $4,000 in taxes and tags being put in a separate line item in the budget because that comes from, that's paid to DMV, of course, not to the vendor. So the total budget amendment again is $49,116. The executive director's recommendation is that the board of directors approve budget amendment number 7. Any questions on that one?
So moved.
Have a motion? Second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed likewise. The ayes have it, motion carries. And our next item of business is our comments from our executive director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and board members. Thank you so much for your attention this evening to these important items and for your approvals to keep us moving forward with all the great projects we have going on with SGWASA to address a range of activities from wastewater to water quality to metering. This evening, I would just like to thank Carleen Evans from Winston Williams Creech Evans and Company LLP for the audit presentation. She got out of here before I could thank her this evening, but she's done a great job as always. And I especially want to thank Richard Ballmer, our finance director, and Ruben Carden, our assistant finance director, for once again their excellent performance this year in managing SGWASA's finance. The finance department team's skills, record keeping, and preparedness greatly assisted the auditing staff again this year in their performance of the review of our expenses and our audit. And I also want to then mention the first quarter financial review and presentation. That was a very good presentation that we had this evening for our first quarter, and I hope the board appreciates, and I know that they do, especially how we budget and what we do every year to ensure that we're not overestimating revenues, for example, or interest income. We're very conservative, and I think that that's showing again this year. And especially in our review of where we are with our revenues and our expenses and how we manage. So I'm already looking forward to putting next year's budget together in finance committee meetings, and we'll announce a schedule for that coming up here in the next couple of weeks so that all of you on the finance committee have those dates, can reserve those dates for your calendar. Let's see, I'd also like to thank the board of directors for your time and your valuable input in the recent strategic plan workshop. I thought it was an excellent workshop. I hadn't had an opportunity to reach back out to you to thank you before tonight, but just wanted to say thank you. I thought it was just a great production, great input, and I really enjoyed it. I look forward to reviewing the everything that we talked about and some of the data to help us refine some of our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as we look at some strategic objectives and tasks that we can continue to share with the board and have discussion regarding that. And last but not least, I want to thank Crystal Lee, our PIO and board secretary, for putting the agenda together this evening in my absence this last week. I appreciate it very much. Crystal, thank you for doing that. And also for your fantastic strategic plan workshop and event that you created and produced. So you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And I think we all enjoyed it tremendously. So again, thank you. So that's all I have for this evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from our attorney, Mr. Wren.
No comments tonight other than to say that I think we're almost officially done with easement acquisition. So that process has been long, but I think we've gotten there. So do you have any?
That's good news.
Right, and we are just on the heels of that. We're finishing up the final tally of the financials related to that project as well, and any adjustments that we have, you'll see it in a potential budget amendment next month. Once we get past that. So I don't have any data for you this evening regarding that or any cost, but I am truly pleased to be finishing that up. Thank you, Jim. That was a long project, and that was instrumental for helping us get the CP number 2 out the door and out for bid. That was a requirement that we have all of those easements acquired, so we've done that. So what was it, 60-some plus easements that we had?
Plus, I think. Yeah.
So.
And
great.
so, and as far as the budget goes, I don't think there will be any major surprises.
No.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Anything for closed session? Okay. Thank you. Comments from our board members. Councilperson Vicki Daniels.
None tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Robert Way.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Tim Karen.
No comments tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Kenneth McLam.
No comment.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Georgiana Kaczynski, Vice Chair.
Thank you to Richard for the hard work in getting this audit pushed through and approved, and I appreciate your presentation.
Yes. And I'd just like to echo that. Thank you, Richard, for all you and your staff at Finance does. Thank you, Scott, for all that you do, working juggling all these different projects we have going at once with more to come. And appreciate all that you do and everyone that works with SGWASA. We appreciate all that all of the employees do. Thank you all. And with that, if we have, do we have any further business to come for us tonight? If not, we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn. Have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no opposition. We are adjourned. Thank you.